Yo, what's up, Raider fans? What's going on? My name is Vinny, back here for another Raider Weekly video. This is my first of the regular season. Unfortunately, I was not able to get any news and notes after the preseason ended with the final roster cuts because, unfortunately, I had to get a lot of stuff ready. Had to go out of town for a family emergency. I did not just have time to make any videos at all the last week. Did not even have time to make a video after the Saints game. For some of you guys that follow the Raider Weekly on Twitter, you notice that in certain cases I actually do have time to follow through games, like live, actively participate, tweeting-wise. Unfortunately, that was not the case against the Saints, and unfortunately will not be the case during the early 10 a.m. slot games on the West Coast because of my schedule on Sunday mornings. However, I am here now to make a video. I'm just combining the first two games of the season. You all know the Raiders are 1-1. They had a very dramatic win at New Orleans to start off the season. However, they had a very, very disappointing loss a couple days ago against the Atlanta Falcons in their possibly final home opener in Oakland. That's still to be determined, though, the future coming up. We won't get into that at all until later on in the season. But without further ado, let's get into the 5 things. And these are combined for both encouraging and very concerning. And there are a few things that are concerning, and there's still a lot of good things that are very encouraging for the Raiders so far this early season. And this one I am definitely concerned on because this is something that always gets addressed. It seems like every week. It doesn't matter what podcast you listen to. If they ever bring this, you're going to be hearing at least this once from anybody. And that is number 5, penalties. Penalties, come on, man. Enough of these penalties for the Raiders. I mean, they got to work on them. I mean, they stall drives offensively, or they'll prolong defensive series, allowing the opponents to get extra yardage, get a free first down, and that continues, and they eventually score on us. I mean, it's already bad enough that the defense is already not doing too well, but you don't want to give your opposing offense any more free yards, or, on our offensive side, giving the ball away, what could have been a first down. I mean, you had 14 penalties for 141 yards against the Saints. Lucky to get that one to win. You led the entire both in penalties and in penalty yardage that week. And then last week against the Falcons, you toned it down a little bit, but you still 9 for 58 yards. A grand total of 23 penalties for 199 yards. And you want to hear something pretty interesting? That's not even the most yardage or penalties so far this early season. Only the Lions, with 25 accepted penalties they've taken, that's 2 more than the Raiders have. That leads the league. And they have 208 yards in penalties. That's 9 more yards than the Raiders have. That's the most also for penalty yardage also. And 7 of those penalties, the 23 penalties the Raiders have had, accepted penalties against the Raiders, 7 of them are pre-snap penalties. Whether it be false start or offsides, neutral zone infraction. That's just 5 free yards you're giving the opposing offense, or you're backing yourselves up 5 yards unnecessarily. You even had holding calls. Also irk me because you had a couple of good runs, especially one with 29-yard run by Jalen Richard. That was called back against Atlanta in the Atlanta game. That was called back. Probably the best run of the day was called back because of a holding call. What else? Some special teams penalties have been called. Whether it be block in the back, or holding. Again, another holding. I'm always going to bring that up. That's probably going to be brought up more than the pre-snap penalties, because those negate a couple of good runs too on special returns on special teams. And the one that really penalty, if you want to go to a penalty that cost us dearly in the Atlanta game, was the Amari Cooper touchdown got called back because Cooper stepped out of bounds for a hot second, and he came back and was the first one to touch the ball. I mean, there was no excuse right there. I mean, some people said he was bumped out. To me, he looked like he went out without even being touched. I mean, come on, Cooper. If you know you weren't touched, you know better than to go back into bounds and be the first one to touch the ball. However, I can't be as hard because there were a couple of people on Twitter that actually made a lot of sense. And they said, what do you for those that are really hard on Cooper? Yeah, I mean, I am hard on him a little bit because, of course, he should have known the rule, but I can't be as hard after I see this perspective. And it was either were you going to try to throw the ball away, or don't give it to Cooper. Cooper shouldn't try to catch it, or better yet, throw it and it gets intercepted. I mean, in that case, taking that penalty is better than the ball being intercepted, because the worst that was happening was just a loss of down. You didn't lose any yardage on that. You just got it was just bad enough already. The damage was done already. Get that touchdown taken away and a loss of down, but it was still a manageable fourth down, which Jack Del Rio at midfield decided to go for it, which I'm going to go into the gambling later on, his gambling later on in this video here. But no, penalties, they're still going to be a concern. I mean, yeah, they did tone down on him a lot. I mean, significantly, like as in a number and on the yardage, but there were a couple that cost this team very dearly. All right, now number 4. Going to the fourth thing. And I meant to emphasize this on the preseason too. Defensive woes. I mean, I thought, okay, maybe there wasn't as much to be concerned in the preseason, but guess what? Preseason has done nothing but expose the concern on defense. I mean, you got poor tackling. I mean, Sean Smith is getting burned. He may not fit the defensive schemes that Ken Norton Jr. has, and he, at least fan-wise, he's on the hot seat just for the fans. And he could be on the hot seat from Jack Del Rio, because Jack Del Rio ended up taking some of the play calling towards the end of the game, defensive-wise, from Ken Norton Jr. And I'm telling you guys, it's a worst-case scenario. I mean, 1,035 yards allowed, total yards, combined the first 2 games. That's the worst in the NFL. 517.5 yards allowed per game on average. Dead last in the NFL. The New Orleans Saints has 451 yards, 451.5 yards allowed. That's 66 yards less. 66 yards between the worst and the second worst defense. The Raiders, all across the board, you can look at it. If you combine everything, they are the worst defense in the league this year after 2 games. I mean, yeah, I know it's only 2 games, but this is still concerning. 69 points, second most. 69 total points allowed, second most in the league. To Indianapolis is 73. 34.5 points a game on average, second most allowed. To Indianapolis is 36.5 points allowed. That's not good. I mean, you only allow... where's the pass rush at? There's no pass rush either. I mean, you had Stacey McGee with 1 sack, and you had Bruce Irvin on that very first defensive series of the season getting that strip sack on Drew Brees. But other than that, the pass rush has not been there. only 2 sacks, and only 2 turnovers. I mean, there's got to be a lot of work on this defense. And I really don't want to sound downer because I still think with 14 games to go, I still think this team can compete for a wild card, but they still have to fix a lot of things. Enough with the defense here. Or one last thing on defense. For news-wise, Carl Joseph's going to split some reps in practice. I mean, you have not seen him a lot on defense. You have seen him a couple times on special teams. Maybe I think we should. Why not give him a chance on defense? I mean, he's the first-round draft pick. For crying out loud. Give him a chance. And I know Ben Heaney, he's not working out running that linebacking core either. I mean, there's a lot more I can go on about this defense on a negative way. If you want to go with the positive way, as much as he needs to work on tackling, but David Amerson was probably the lone bright spot for the Raiders defensively. I mean, he had 7 tackles in that game against Atlanta, 3 deflected, 3 batted down passes, and then he did have that 1 interception of Matt Ryan. Which, by the way, that was only 1 of 4 times the Atlanta Falcons did not score. And that was really the only real time in the second half. Because the other time they punted the ball, but that was just like seconds left of the game. It really only gave maybe the Raiders only 1 crack at the end zone with 2 seconds up to that game for the Raider offense. But the first two defensive series were pretty okay. But even they allowed a few yards in that one. Allowed the Falcons to get in the Raider territory. I think the very first defensive series. Not really much positives I can say about the Raider defense at this point. Number 3, injuries. Okay, they really defensively. I mean, they don't have too many injuries. Really, the main concern, injury-wise, is on the offensive line. A very solid offensive line so far this season. They've done a great job of protecting Derek Carr, but they gotta stay healthy to make sure Carr doesn't get knocked on his ass all day. I mean, it is very concerning. I mean, you had Gabe Jackson go down. Menelik Watson went down. Well, I know one other went down this against Atlanta. I just can't get him on top of my head. But you really need a strong offensive line. I mean, it is a strong offensive line. As long as they stay healthy, that offensive line is going to be really great for the Raiders. And that has been a need that they address that so far has been addressed. But they need to stay healthy. And that, I mean, even the running game, running game so far has improved, in which I'm going to be getting to that right now. And that's the number 2 thing I'm going to take from it is how great the offense has been production. I mean, look at it, 63 points. They have the 3rd most points total in the league. 31.5 points per game on average, 3rd in the league. 470 yards per game. They lead the league in that, yards per game. I mean, even if they had 25 first downs against the Saints, 29 against the Falcons, first down, they can move the ball. This offense can move the ball. I mean, 309 yards passing, Derek Carr on average. In the passing game, that's both team-wise and Derek Carr, both 6th in the entire NFL, 3rd in the AFC. The running game as a collectively, 161 yards per game. That's 2nd in the entire league. And so far they have valued the ball. No turnovers. 0 turnovers in the first 2 games. Okay, yeah, there was one that maybe the one that was supposed to be intercepted, however, was bailed out on a pass interference call on the end zone from Atlanta. Atlanta should have had that one turnover interception in the end zone. However, the guy made a pass interference. He didn't even have to do that, and he still would have made the interception. So thanks to that pass interference call is the reason why that Derek Carr still has a 0 on the interception ledger. I mean, the offensive line, as I mentioned, they got to stay healthy, as I mentioned, for number 3 with the injuries. However, they've done really well. And really only one sack allowed, but however, the defense really, he wasn't knocked down or anything. I think Derek Carr was trying to scramble and did not get and I don't think he got back to the line of scrimmage. And they technically count that as a sack. But really, the offensive line is not, besides on a technicality, they only allowed one sack. But in reality, they've done a great job of protecting him, and I don't get why they count that as a sack when he wasn't even touched. But that's not how but I don't make the rules. I think it's just an excuse for NFL to give some defensive players the pad some stats. And last but not least, the gamble, the balls of Jack Del Rio. There's some things already, a handful of things I can talk about. I mean, he made a successful 2-point conversion, which is seconds ago against the Saints. After Seth Roberts' touchdown in that late in the Saints game, he decides to go for 2-point conversion. Derek Carr was able to complete the pass to Michael Crabtree. Unfortunately, they took and that's going back to the penalty too. Excessive penalty that allowed 15 free yards for Drew Brees. And they got lucky that the guy from the Saints missed a 61-yard field goal. Because that would have been the difference between 0-2 and 1-1. The other thing I liked, I mean, you got to give credit not only to just Jack Del Rio, but also the people who work in the booth for the Raiders. Caught on the replay, 12 guys on a field. And that was a 4th and 3 on the first offensive series of the second half. It was on a 4th and 3. And 12 men on the field is a 5-yard penalty. And that was huge. They were down 13-7 at that point. And coming back from commercial, Jack Del Rio decides he heard something from the booth, advised him to challenge. He goes for the challenge. And what do you know, there was 12 men on the field on that punt return. One of the guys, to his credit, tried to get off the field for the Falcons, but he did not by the time the ball was snapped. That got him 5 yards. And with the result of that yardage, they got the first down. The Raiders got a first down. And they were able to get to the end. And they were able to get a touchdown from a 30-yard touchdown pass from Carr to Walford. Which, by the way, you got to get him involved. And get the tight ends involved. That's the one thing that needs to get done. So that was successful. He also Jack Del Rio did the same thing. He did the same thing He did the same thing with Amari Cooper, which they thought, okay, on a 3rd down play, they spot the ball wrong. He challenged the spot of the ball, which instead of it being 4th and inches, it would have been a first down. He went for the challenge on that one. Successful. Amari Cooper was about a half yard beyond the first down marker after further review. I mean, Del Rio, he's been playing with house money all season so far. And so far he's done well, with the exception of that going for a 4th down and 2 with that Amari Cooper, after that Amari Cooper gaff which they gave the touchdown that previous play, but I really couldn't blame Del Rio because he was having success so far early on the year, but I just hope he doesn't continue on going too crazy. I mean, I love his guts so far, but eventually everything's going to level out, so you got to be selective of what you do. He's got to be selective of what he does. When to go for it, when to gamble. So far, it's paid off with the exception of that 4th and 2 at the midfield. Oh, yeah, and also, he went for it on 4th down. Instead of maybe kicking a field goal to get the 3 points to cut it. It was still at that point 21-14 Atlanta. Instead of making it 21-17, he decided to go for it, and Crabtree on that 4th down was able to get a 2-yard touchdown pass from Carr that temporarily tied the game. So, going through this whole video, I'm very pleased so far with some of what the Raiders have done, but there's still a lot of concerns. Any defense has got to get worked. You got to work on the penalties, both sides of the ball. I mean, you have the work cut out still. As much as there's some good things I praise them on, still got your work cut out. 1-1 right now. I mean, I'll take the start. The same record the Raiders started last year. And by the way, this team has talent. I still say they have talent to get this thing worked on. Do what it takes to compete for a playoff spot. I still say this team will make the playoffs. But you got to work on stuff. And I just can't emphasize it anymore. So that will do it for this episode of the Raider Weekly video on YouTube. Again, subscribe to this channel if you like what you saw. Follow me on Twitter. Or follow the page on Twitter at Raider Weekly. And also you can like on Facebook. I will leave all those links on the description. And until then, you guys have a great week. Raider Nation. Don't forget Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. CBS, they're at the Tennessee Titans. By the way, a team who really, at that game, was the third, what they call a dress rehearsal preseason game. That game was the one that really worried me the most. But there's good news. You actually have film on the Titans in the game that you guys played against them because they had played their first stringers for most of that first half. So the defense can find ways to adjust. Figure out, okay, what went wrong? How do we get to Mariota? How do we stop DeMarco Murray? How do we stop Derrick Henry? Because they have a double-edged sword at running. I mean, the defense, the running game was not good. Run defense was not good. Defense as a whole wasn't good, but DeMarco Murray, now you got to face with DeMarco Murray and a rookie Derrick Henry, who torched this Raider defense in the preseason. All right, guys. But once again, though, I will leave the descriptions to follow, to subscribe. Click the subscribe button if you like what you saw, and also for the Facebook page, you can like that too. So, once again, until next week, my name is Vinny. Have a great week, and Raider Nation, go Raiders.